I am Jose Tence Ruiz, but my friends call me Bogie, and I like to make visual art that matters to me. Art was my babysitter. My parents were young people who had new jobs. And so I got left behind with my grandfather, si Arturo Roseberg. And he was having quite a time with a malikot na bata whose one of my little games was to stab the electric socket and get grounded. And sabi niya, ano bang gagawin ko sa batang ito? Then he showed me a book by Caravaggio. Binigay niya sa akin, nakita niya, tumahimik ako. You have to imagine what Caravaggio does to a 4-year-old. There's a lot of skin, there's a lot of nakedness, and there's violence. Pero I was like, wow, parang na-mesmerize ako. I didn't know why. And then also my grandfather being the agent for Golden Press in the Philippines. This was the age of the pocketbook, 1960, 1970, ano? He also had an extra copy and he'd say, oh yan, drawingan mo yung likod niyan. Nevertheless, everybody in the 60s said, what, you want to be an artist? That's bad. That's bad. There's no job there. It's poverty, you know. Ano sabi nila? Gusto mo bang maging hampas lupa? Ganun yung tawag sa artist doon, you know. Even my grandfather introduced me to art. Sabi niya, get something practical. I think it's the prevailing mood at the time. This is like 1973. Parang nothing's gonna happen to an artist. Although, we did have a fairly successful one in the family, no? Si Pandi Abiado. He was my uncle. He introduced me to the art world. At 10 years old, I went to his inaugural exhibition, one-man show at Luz Gallery in EDSA. But everybody kept advising, take something that you'll find a job for. I did. And I actually didn't do bad in advertising. Parang perfunctory ng konti. So by the time I was in my second year, I decided, if nobody's paying attention, I'm going to shift. And I did. I shifted. After my second year, I shifted to painting. And I noted right away, I was there at 7 and I would leave at 9:30 when the guard would chase me away. I was just doing whatever I wanted in the studio on my own. I do not have any hobbies except art. When in between, when I'm really fatigued from painting, I go to Tumblr and I just look and look and look. I see something and I said, oh, wow, man, hindi ko naisip yun, nakakabuisit, ang galing. And you get stimulated. Some people say, wag kang tumingin para maging original ka. Sabi ko, hindi. Strengthen your originality by resisting copying. But do not close your eyes to everyone who shows you something. But that's the challenge. Maintain the integrity na, no, this is me. And how is it you? Iisang lugar lang ang pinagpanganakan mo. Iisa lang ang magulang mo. Iisa lang ang nagpalaki sa'yo. You will bring your personality. That's why I'm saying, your personality, which was formed from, kind of disparate and diverse elements, will now merge with form. And that becomes your work. The one guy who summed it up, his name was George Bennett. And sabi ni Bennett, why are you looking at all the books? Sabi niya, have you seen the jeepneys? Like, I could do 2 years of work on those things. Like, they're moving, they're junk, and yet they're painted, and they're happy, and they're funk, and they're hard rock. Sabi niya, don't you want to think about those things? But I never saw them as the totality that George Bennett saw them as. The whole idea was, find your art, but also find a Filipino voice. What was Filipino? Because everything prior was admiring New York, admiring Paris, and then suddenly you had Metropop, and suddenly you had OPM. Ah, man. For all of us, that was the moment. How do we become nationalistic? Of course, SR was influenced by the left. And parang, can we represent the downtrodden? Ako naman, I came from a different place. Sabi ko, can we represent the difficulty of being alive? And then the difficulty of being alive comes from the difficulty of being poor. And the difficulty of being poor comes from being exploited, therefore being colonialized, being non-Filipino in the Philippines. Ang sense ko was, can I look at a style that is very exciting to me and yet will tackle the difficulty of being alive? I would say that what was floating in the air in 76, 70, 77, 78 was already a beginning of resistance to Marcos. Kumbaga, nadagukan ka na ng gusto ng 73 to 75 and people were beginning to say, okay, tama na, sobra na ito. The abuse is beginning to reel itself. And so people were organizing along the lines of either completely pro-Marcos ka or nag-o-organize na ng kind of neutral resistance. But that neutral resistance was always overlapped by the idea of cultural nationalism. Para bang, ano nga ba tayo? Yun ang unang resistance mo, the chains of post-colonialism eh. And remember, this is not just the Philippines. Malaysia had it, Singapore had it, Vietnam had beaten America in 75. So much of Southeast Asia was beginning to really come into its own. We were all recipients of that kind of an air. In 2015, where we finally went back to the Venice Biennale. After so long, you get this lucky break to be in the Olympics of art. And you've got to be impressive. Eh? When you're in Venice, there are 300 other great works that people who have 3 days are struggling to see. If you cannot hold their attention in the first 10 seconds with something na they'll say, wow, talo ka na. And that was the only criterion I tried to abide by. How can us Filipinos hold their attention? Also, syempre, may sense ka pa rin of national representation, which had always been everything that my life was building up to. Parang eto ka na, ikaw na yung artist ng Pinas. You're looking for a voice, ngayon ikaw ang voice. So that's the challenge, what to do. What stimulates me? Damn, just try living in this country. And the coping mechanism is both frustrating and stimulating. The whole idea of Venice coming in 2015 was already dovetailing into an earlier idea of the Philippines just trying to hold its own against China. And the symbol of that was the BRP Sierra Madre, yung kinakalawang na barko sa Ayungin Shoal. It's an irreplaceable moment. You've seen the disassembled shoal upstairs. They're there. We're waiting for somebody crazy enough to want to take it on. I hope I live long enough. Yeah, that's a very nice question. The first answer is there any other art but social realism? Sabi ko, was there any art that you knew that really wasn't engaged in the social? And then somebody will come back to me very quickly, Malvich. Sabi naman ni Malvich, we are heading from the liberation of labor into a utopian realism, and therefore I want to symbolize it with pure minimalism. If he kept repeating himself 100 times, I'd accuse him of insincerity, but he didn't. He moved on after that. So the question is, do I go into a work that I know cannot but be correct art, or do I use my knowledge for ornamentalism? I think yun ang question na tinatanong natin every time. Do I just do something to brighten up your wall? In the 80s, I would excitedly show, sell nothing, and then receive the call. Soli na namin lahat ng trabaho. Parang, wow. Di ba? Soli na namin lahat ng trabaho. Sige, soli nyo na. And I said to myself, kawawa ko naman. Sinoli lahat. Wala man lang gustong itago doon at talaga walang pag-asa. 15 years later, pwede ba namin soli lahat? Kayo. Oh, ganun na yung sagot ko. Kayo. I own them now. So sabi ko, I am going to be the ultimate beneficiary of that value if you cannot recognize it. It's kind of onanistic, but you know, it's a way to cope.
Convince you otherwise that maybe it's also a way to go, like other artists that have gone. I mean, like the younger artists are.
Here's the funny paradox there. The most expensive artwork is the one that didn't care. So sabi ko, yeah, I'm actually playing the long, big game. I'm always looking for the jackpot. Yes, I want the money, but I want it on my own terms. And it's gonna be bigger than your cheap shots. Because when it hits, it hits. In between, we are making do. That's my strategy. We are making do. Here's the question. What matters? I think that's the question to ask. What does matter? Does it matter to you that you are the only one enjoying privilege among a community that you're aware of? So when you answer the question that I can be the only comfortable people out of 3,000 in my community, and if that matters to you, then your art will reflect it. But if you say, I want to be a member of that community and I want to be able to explain my art, then yeah, I will gear my art towards making it accessible to that community or presenting to that community something they can enter. I'm not saying that people who do totally obscure, totally elitist, decorative, shiny things that are shimmering but mean nothing do not matter. But you realize that's what matters to them. My art is all about denouncing absences of decency, abuses of power. Therefore, when you have gotten your package of values, the art that addresses your package of values is the art that matters.
Ano ang sukat ng halaga ng isang buhay? Kayamanan ba o di kaya ang pangalan? Ano ang titimbang sa gusto kulang ng katuparan ng adhikain at paninindigan?
May gantimpala bang dapat pang asahan upang kumilos ng tama makatwiran? Saglit lamang ang ating buhay, tilamsik sa dakilang ako.